Welcome, everyone. We're going to give it just a minute for people to join us. We'll get started soon. All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for being here to join us for Feline Fluency, Understanding Your Cat's Body Language, and all things Therapy Cat. So please feel free as we go forward to use the chat to ask any questions that you have, or just to converse with us and with the other participants. We love that engagement and to see what you're thinking and feeling, and would just love to see you out there. Amelia Malone is also on this call. She's our HABIC graduate research assistant. She's amazing. Hello. And she is here to help out as well. So she's going to help me keep an eye on that chat function and answer questions as we go. And if we have some time at the end, we can also do some more Q&A stuff at that point as well. So my name is Kate Miller, she, her pronouns, and I am so excited to be talking to you today about cats. I'm the animal trainer and volunteer coordinator here at HABIC. Notice I'm very intentional about being an animal trainer, not the dog trainer, because we get to work with the cats too. So we want to be a little bit more inclusive there. Usually when I do this introduction, I talk about all the ways that I get involved with dog training and dogs at CSU, but today we get to focus all about the cats, which I'm just super excited about because we don't get to focus on them as often as I think, maybe sometimes we should or sometimes we really want to. So I do have a pretty rich history in working with cats as well as dogs. So I've been able to work with thousands upon thousands of cats through my work in the animal shelter systems. So that was everything from behavior evaluations to behavior modification for fearful and aggressive cats, or cats who are coming out of hoarding situations, socializing a lot of feral kittens, and implementing a lot of cat training programs as well. So yes, cats are absolutely trainable. They're actually quite good at training if you know how to speak their language. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. I also have had the opportunity to work with large cats. That was primarily at my internship at the Denver Aquarium. So they have 3 Amur tigers and an African serval. So an African serval is like a sort of a dog-sized wildcat. So got to work with some of those large cats as well. There's often this great debate about cats versus dogs, but I always like to say that I'm an equal opportunity cat and dog person, and that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about growing the cat program here at HABIC. So just a quick introduction. If you aren't familiar with us already, HABIC stands for Human Animal Bond in Colorado, and we are a center in the School of Social Work here at CSU. We train and sponsor therapy animals to go into nursing homes, hospitals, schools, and more. We were founded in 1993, so last year we celebrated our 30th anniversary. We are self-funded and rely completely on grants and donations to cover all of our operational costs. And we have about 120 active dog teams all across the Front Range. For comparison purposes, we have 6 cat teams, so 120 dogs, 6 cats. But one of my pet projects, you see what I did there, has been to increase the number of cats, and that's been happening slowly but steadily over the past few years, and I'm still working to boost those numbers up a little bit. Okay, so since we mentioned that we are working with therapy animals, I want to really quickly go over what these different types of animals are. So when we're thinking about like support animals, or animals that might be out in the community with these different roles and titles, we typically have service animals, emotional support animals, and therapy animals. Probably the most well-known is going to be a service animal. So these guys are defined by the ADA, and they can be either dogs or miniature horses, but those are the only 2 species that can be defined as a service animal. and they are trained to assist a person with a disability. So by definition, service animals will not be cats. These animals go into public areas with their person. So basically, wherever their person can go, the service animal gets to go there too. This can be something like a seeing eye dog, a mobility dog, a hearing alert dog. The key here is that these animals are trained to an individual with a particular task that really gives that person independence that they wouldn't otherwise have. So because we're talking all about cats today, anecdotally, I did want to share a story of a colleague I have who has a cat that she has a really great relationship with. And she also struggles with low blood sugar. And so this cat occasionally would act extremely uncharacteristic of how he would normally act. So he would start yowling just incessantly at her, and she thought it was very strange. And she noticed that always about a minute after he would do that, she would start to get really dizzy and be at risk of passing out. And so he was alerting her to this drop in glucose levels, which is a service behavior. So that is something that we can train dogs to do to keep their person safe. So unfortunately, because he is a cat and the way the ADA is written, this cat still would not be a service animal. So he still wouldn't get to like gain public access to go with his person different places. But I mean, he can absolutely be a huge help to his owner in their home. So just interesting. If we give them the opportunity, I think cats can do a lot more than sometimes we give them credit for. Okay, so then moving on into emotional support animals, also known as ESAs. These are defined by the Fair Housing Act. So really the easiest way to think about an ESA is that they're companion animals. So they're prescribed by a mental health provider. And so basically, the Fair Housing Act has recognized that there are these amazing mental health benefits to having a pet. And the reality is that many people are not in a housing situation that would allow them to have a pet. So either there's something like a no pet policy, or there's pet rent, or some other pet related policy that really prevents somebody from being able to experience the benefits of having a pet. So ESAs don't need any type of special training because they don't gain any public access outside of the home. So ESAs can be really any type of pet, but most often they're going to be a cat or a dog. And then last, but certainly not least, we have therapy animals. So therapy animals are unique because they get to go out into the community and bring joy to lots and lots of people. They're trained to go to those nursing home, schools, hospitals, and all those different areas, and can really bring joy to people who might need it most. Therapy animals have what we call limited public access. So that means that they're allowed to go where they're specifically volunteering, but they don't really get to go anywhere else. So they can go to CSU when they're specifically volunteering at CSU, but then they don't necessarily get to go to their classes outside of that, or to the dining hall or anything like that. So they get just sort of that limited public access. So the other two types of animals are really focused on bringing benefits to an individual, so the service animal or the ESA. And then the therapy animals are really cool because they bring joy to lots and lots and lots of different people. So they get to be really unique in that way. At HABIC, we do certify dogs and cats. And cats really do play a truly amazing role in this work, but we'll talk more about that in just a couple minutes. Okay, so our mission is to improve the quality of life for people of all ages, and I like to say in all abilities, through the therapeutic benefits of companion animals. We do that in three key ways: community engagement, education, and research. So in terms of community engagement, this is typically what we think about when we're thinking about therapy animals. So like I said, our teams get to go to lots of different settings. Some of those are going to be hospitals, also long-term care. They go into schools, places like addiction recovery, lots of work with mental health, and hospice settings as well. So these visits can look different, kind of regardless of where the animals are going. But I like to point out that sometimes these are more informal interventions where the animals are coming in, people just sort of love on the animals, but there's not really a goal-oriented intervention that's happening. In the schools, however, there often is really that goal-oriented intervention where we're working one-on-one with a student and the animal is there as well. And the animal is really helping them work towards like social emotional regulation, or eye contact is a nice, easy example. Sometimes it's easier to learn eye contact with an animal and then transfer that to a person instead of trying to learn it on a person, if that's something that you're not totally comfortable with. So we do have one cat who gets to do that really goal-directed intervention, and we'll talk about him when I introduce you to some of our HABIC cats. We are involved in education in terms of human-animal interactions here at CSU as well. So HABIC developed this graduate certificate in social aspects of human-animal interaction. So this is a 9-credit graduate certificate, 9 credits total. It's comprised of 3 classes that are each 3 credits each, and they are offered in the fall, spring, and summer. So that means that you could complete the certificate in a year, and all of this is offered through CSU Online. So it's completely online. So folks at CSU or even the community can be working towards this graduate certificate. Okay, and then I also just like to mention research. So we've been able to sponsor human-animal interaction studies all across campus and lots of different fields, thanks to a really amazingly generous gift that was $500,000 going towards efforts to support research in this field. Okay, so now why we're all here, all about the cats. So wanted to dive in with just sort of this idea of why therapy cats? Why is this even something that we're talking about? And also, I'll pause here just really quickly and check in with Amelia. Is there anything happening in the chat?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so first of all, cats have a way of bringing this really quiet calm into the settings that they visit. When people come to see the dogs, it's really common to have a lot of energy and sort of these really high-pitched puppy voices. So like, oh my gosh, a dog, he's so cute. Like the energy is just through the roof. We're using the baby voice on our dogs. Things get loud, things get exciting, which is awesome. And when there's a cat, it's really cool. There's this much more hushed greeting that people will do. People are more likely to move slowly and talk really quietly. And I don't have any solid evidence or data to support this. But if anyone out there is looking for a research project and wants to work a lot with the cats, I would bet that we would see significant results if we compared like the volume and the type of greetings that people do with the dogs versus what they do with the cats. And I think that would be really something really interesting to look at. Okay, and then cats are great at consent and boundaries. So this makes them really special in the therapy setting because this is a skill that they're just naturally very, very good at. So this is largely because they are both predator and prey. So they're obviously out hunting rodents and birds, and so they are absolutely filling that niche of being a predator, but they can also very easily become a meal to birds of prey, foxes, coyotes, animals like that. So we as humans don't seem to be very used to interacting with prey animals. And I think that makes a lot of sense because we don't look through the world through that lens, but cats do. So one important implication of this is that cats are very likely to flee and hide if they aren't feeling comfortable. So if they aren't able to flee, they can resort to some pretty drastic measures in an attempt to escape. So spinning, clawing, hissing, all of those things. And again, this makes a lot of sense if we're thinking about a cat's natural history of having to survive in a world where they could become a snack to somebody. So when we're working with these cats with people, cats are really modeling this idea of creating really clear boundaries because they just won't engage in a session unless they feel totally comfortable. So that might look like you bring a cat in their carrier, and if they don't feel good about the situation, they're just not going to come out of the carrier. So I'm really good at building a nice comfy environment, and then being super duper clear about I'm comfortable with this or not comfortable with this. So this is Dyla. She is one of our HABIC cats, and she's actually since retired since this picture was taken. So she's spending lots of days relaxing in the sunshine now. But I wanted to bring her in here because of her really unique transportation in this cat stroller. So she used to visit a pediatric unit in a hospital in Denver. And so with this cat stroller, it functioned in a couple of ways. Kind of most importantly for her, it just kept her up off of the floor. So instead of walking on the hospital floor and being at risk of like being stepped on, because people aren't usually looking for something that small, as where, you know, a dog you usually see coming. But so the stroller just kept her off the floor so that she wasn't getting stepped on or anything like that. But also it gave her this nice natural place to tuck away if she ever needed to. So if she wasn't comfortable, she could just tuck down into her stroller and feel nice and safe and secure. So Nyla in particular, I'm not sure if she ever used her stroller as a place to hide during a session, just because she was so gregarious and so outgoing. So she mostly used it as transportation. But again, having that safe place to go is super important for the kitties. I do like to point out, so she would go through in the stroller. She was very good at waiting in her stroller, and she actually got to the point that she would like listen to the conversation her owner was having with somebody who might want to pet her. So the owner would come up to the door of a room, you know, open the door, ask if the kiddo wanted to see her. And if they said yes, Nyla knew what that meant, and she would jump out of the stroller and head on over to go see the people. So that was really sweet. And if they said no, she would just stay in the stroller. So she was a really, really special kitty in our program. Okay, so another reason why we have therapy cats and why they are a really important part of the program is that people love to see the cats. It's really always amazes me at the de-stress events on campus. You can sort of scan where all of the animals are. So if they're sort of in an outdoor setting, you'll scan and you'll see like a small group of people over here, a small group of people over here, and a small group of people over here. And then there's a huge group of people. And that huge group of people is almost always around the cat. And it's always really fun to talk to people as they're walking past the event when there's a cat. So we'll be out there like, hey, you can come pet the dogs. And then you say, oh, there's a cat here too. Their reactions are just absolutely priceless. They're so fantastic. So it tends to be sort of this mix of like excitement and surprise and disbelief that there's a cat there. And then another cool thing that kind of points to how much the students especially really like to see the cats is we can have them indoors away from all of the dogs. So there'll be like several dogs outside. We can put one cat inside, so you'd have to go into the building, you know, find your way to where the cat is. And people totally do that. So they will like take these extra steps to like go seek out where the cat is in a way that feels, to me at least, a little bit more intentional than if there was an additional dog in the building. Sort of like, well, that's okay. But if there's a cat in the building, they're like, I need to go find the cat. So I think that's really cool. Okay, and then I did want to introduce you to some more of the HABIC cats. And this is to point out that every cat has their own therapy style, their own preferences. And we never try to fit the cat into a specific mold and say, this is what the cat should do, but we sort of let the cat show us who they are and what they would like to do. And then we let them choose how they want to be a therapy cat. So this is Kiko. He visits the students at CSU de-stress events, and he is almost always being cradled like a baby. So the students cradle him like this, and they just pass him kind of like from one student to the next. And he just spends the entire hour just snuggled up like this, and he absolutely loves it. So many cats would not enjoy this, but Kiko just adores it, and the students really adore him too. This is Toby. He is one of our newer HABIC kitties. His nickname is Toby Tobeans, which is super cute. And yeah, he just started volunteering a couple weeks ago. And so his style is a little bit more active. So he'll be sort of up on top of the table, seeking out attention from people. Occasionally, he might walk over into somebody's lap, but he's tending to sort of like work the room, if you will. So he's like, here's a person, they pet me. Here's another person, they pet me. Here's another person. And he's making sure he's getting pets from everybody who's there. Then this is Holmes. He's much more of a lap cat. So he likes to kind of snuggle into a nice, warm, comfy lap, and he'll stay there for longer periods of time. So when he comes to events, you'll see a group of people sort of sitting with him, and they're waiting for their turn. And this just like prolonged snuggle with this little cuddle bug. Jolene is really special because she is volunteering at long-term care facilities. So she gets to go room to room to visit with the residents. And this is especially special because when the dogs visit, they're usually too large to be up on somebody's bed, or at least too large to be on somebody's bed safely. But Jolene can just kind of be held and snuggled. And if you've never held a purring cat, there's nothing quite as therapeutic as that. And it kind of just brings out this nice, nurturing, loving sense, being able to hold on to them like that. Okay, and then there's Carl. So I think he's one of the most unique cats that we have. And he's the one who's volunteering in a middle school. This is him attempting some of his agility equipment, attempting and debatably failing in this moment. This was after COVID, so I think he was a little bit out of practice. And so instead of jumping up over the jump, here he is going under it, which, you know what, is still pretty impressive to ask a cat to do something with a jump, and he's doing something with it. And it just goes to show us that we can never force our cats to do anything that they don't want to do. But he does do quite a bit of agility, and he does a lot of clicker training and tricks as well. So him and his owner work with a school counselor with the middle schoolers, and they work a lot on social emotional regulation with these middle schoolers. And Carl gets to fill this really unique role where he gets to help them out with that. All right, so now I can move into how are we actually listening to our cats? And I can pause for another second here and just make sure that there's no questions that are popping up.
No questions yet, but I'll let you know if anything shows up.
Perfect, thank you. I said that and then I almost hit the mute button to start talking, and that would not have worked well. Okay, so let's dive into how we're actually listening to our cats. As we've talked about, they are masters of consent. So how can we listen to them and really catch some of those subtle cues about whether or not they're actually wanting to interact with us? So I like to start out by saying that cats really do communicate differently than dogs. So one thing I like to point out when we start talking about them is that they aren't dogs. And that might seem really obvious, but we are so used to looking at dog body language in our society, and especially in animal therapy work. So it's really important to take off those dog-colored sunglasses and really look at cats as their own animal. So one of the really big differences between our cats and our dogs is actually in their facial muscles. So dogs make this really adorable puppy face when they really want something from us, or if they're really worried. They sort of press their eyes together and lift up their eyebrows. And yeah, it's the classic puppy dog face. We can see the same face from Puss in Boots from the movie Shrek. And he does a really great example of this. But he's a cartoon cat. And you probably haven't seen a cat in real life making this puppy dog face. And that's because they really almost always look more like this cat on the left. That's because they lack a muscle in their face called the levator anguli oxuli medialis. I will test all of you on that at the end, so memorize that name. I'm totally kidding. But basically what that is it's that muscle in their eyebrow that gives them the ability to make the Puss in Boots face. So by definition, cats are almost going to look more like this cat on the left all the time. And sometimes the cats get sort of a bad rap for this. So they can sort of look aloof and uncaring to us because they're making the same face when they're happy, or if they just got yelled at, or maybe they just made a mess, or maybe they really want something from us, right? They just sort of have this blank stare that they're staring at us with. But there are lots of other things that we can look at and really get an idea of this rich communication that they do have with us. Okay, so when a cat says, no way, this is going to be really, really obvious body language that you'll see from a cat. And we won't actually spend too much time on this because we're talking mostly about therapy cats today. So what we're going to be looking for are much more subtle signs. But when a cat very clearly needs space and you aren't giving it to them, all of this hissing, growling, the ears going back, the big arched back, the fur that just puffs up and makes the cat look a lot bigger are all really great indicators that the cat is terrified and feeling very defensive. So this is sort of like the classic Halloween cat. And there's no doubt about it, these cats do not want to be in the situation that they are in. But like I said, we're going to focus on some more of those subtle signs. And in large part, that's because cats will usually prefer to opt out before they become defensive and aggressive. So if they have a chance to flee and get out of that situation, most of the time that's what they're going to do. So providing them with that space to hide can be really important. And keeping in mind, right, that they are prey animals. So this makes sense that they would want to get out of that situation and hide away because they probably can't fight off a fox or a coyote. So instead of jumping into fight mode, they're usually reverting into flight first. So that's why it's really important for our therapy cats to have a place to hide so that when they become uncomfortable, they can do that first. So our habit cats will come to their events in some sort of container. That sounds kind of bad, but some sort of carrier, a backpack. They have really cute cat backpacks nowadays, a cat carrier, or like the stroller like we saw with Nyla. And it gives them a really nice, safe place to hide away in case they ever choose to use it. If they ever choose to use it, so if they ever choose to duck back into their carrier or go back into their backpack, we would give them space and let them choose whether or not they wanted to come back out. So we would just let them hang out in their hideaway. And if they come back out, that's fantastic. But if they choose to stay sort of tucked away and hidden away, we would say, all right, we have to respect that. So confident cats, they're going to be really exploratory. So one way to know if a cat is just feeling really good and confident is that they're coming out of this carrier. So they're walking out of their carrier and they're moving around the room. And really importantly, as they're moving around that room, they're not really looking for a place to hide. So how do you tell if a cat is exploring versus trying to find a place to hide? First of all, if they're trying to hide, they're almost always going to be at least somewhat successful. So you can think about a cat at a vet. If they are looking for a place to hide, they will wedge themselves under something or into something. And if they don't have a great place that they can actually hide, they'll still attempt to hide. So this is where you'll see pictures of cats like in the sink at the vet's office. Like we can still clearly see that there's a cat in the sink, but they're really trying to like tuck away and be invisible. There's also sort of this like frantic, desperate energy that cats will use when they're trying to hide. As we're an exploring cat, we'll sort of move more slowly, more deliberately. They're sort of checking things out. and without that frantic, like they're just trying to get into a different space. Another difference that you'll see is that a more confident cat will use the interior space of the room a lot more. If the cat's goal is really to find a place to hide, they're going to be on the periphery of the room. Again, looking for those places that they can duck under or disappear into. Confident cats also stand with their tails really tall, so their tails held nice and high. These two are ridiculously cute because their little tails are making a heart. But they're a really great example of a cat standing up nice and tall and then their tail being nice and tall as well. So that tail can really kind of be a barometer for how the cat is feeling. With their tail held really high, kind of the happier the cat. So the higher the tail, the happier the cat. If the tail becomes more neutral and it's sort of more parallel with the back of the cat's body, that cat's going to be probably less certain about the situation. And then if their tail is really low, so super low, maybe even touching the ground or almost touching the ground, that cat is probably feeling really uncomfortable and is likely trying to get away out of that situation. More on the tails, relaxed cats will have very little or no movement in their tails. The more agitated the cat, the more movement in the tail that there's going to be. This is another place that we really need to take off our dog-colored glasses. For cats, again, less movement is better. For dogs, more tail movement is better, right? Wagging tails, and the harder that tail is wagging, the more likely it is to be a happy dog. But if we see that from a cat, we've got problems. So as a cat's tail starts to become twitchy, as it starts to kind of twitch back and forth, that cat is probably starting to get a little bit more agitated. And as there becomes more and more and more movement, the cat ends up like swishing and sort of thrashing their tail back and forth. And that cat is either overstimulated or very close to becoming overstimulated. If you see this from a cat, it's a really clear indication to stop touching them and to give them space. So overstimulation is a super uncomfortable sensation for a cat. It's where they might have been enjoying petting, but now that sensation is basically just too much in that moment. And they're like, I need you to stop. And so we can see that coming as that tail starts to swish more and more and more. So again, as a person petting a cat, if you're petting this cat and enjoying a really nice interaction, you see that tail start to go, I would stop petting the cat and let that cat go about do something else. In more of a therapy setting, so if you were the handler of a therapy cat and you're watching your cat interact with other people, you would also keep an eye on this tail. And if you start to see that movement start to increase, you would just want to intervene before the cat has to intervene for themselves and say, hey, stop, that's too much. Right, relaxed cats will also have really nice relaxed eyes that sort of make this nice almond shape. They tend to look really sleepy and their eyelids look really heavy. And you can compare that to this cat on the right who has really nice big wide eyes. So I would bet that somebody is behind the camera, like with one of those dangly cat toys or a ball or something that cat wants to chase. This cat on the right doesn't look aggressive by any means, but he doesn't look relaxed either. And this cat probably has other things on his mind than getting pets and snuggles from a person. Relaxed cats are also going to have relaxed ears. So they're just sort of resting neutrally on the top of their head. So this is a relaxed cat. And you can compare that to this cat on the right, who's modeling what we like to call quote unquote airplane ears, where those ears are coming out and becoming more parallel with the cat's head. So this cat is a lot more unsure of the situation and would probably like to find one of those hiding places right about now. So his eyes are also wider and the pupils especially are huge on this cat. This cat is also crouched down a lot lower to the ground. So this is obviously a still photo of a cat, but if we were watching this cat on the right in real time, I'm guessing that it would be swiveling its head and searching for one of those places to go hide with some of that frantic energy that cats have when they're trying to look for a way to escape. Right. And cats really communicate a lot through scent. So they express a lot of affection as well through scent. And so that one can be really hard for us to imagine because that is not a way that we communicate. We really don't use scent to communicate, but cats absolutely do. So scent is incredibly important to a cat's social structure. And knowing who belongs in that cat's group. So if you were to introduce two cats to each other, maybe you're bringing another cat into your home, one of the most important things that you can do is called a scent swap. So that's where you do something along the lines of rubbing down one cat with a towel and then giving that towel to the other cat. Or you can do this by swapping their blankets and their bedding. So you have one cat who's nice and comfy in his blanket and he's been sleeping in all his bedding. And then ideally you'd let him get up and walk off his bed. Then you'd pick up that bed and swap it over to the other cat. And you're really letting those scents sort of intermingle. And it's creating a new communal scent with the two scents combined. And that tells the cats like, hey, we belong together. We are part of the same colony. And that can do a lot to avoid cat conflict. And they are communicating with us through that scent too. So mostly they do this by rubbing their scents all over us. Don't worry, if they are rubbing their scent all over you, you won't smell that because we don't have that vomeronasal organ like cats do that allows them to smell those pheromones. So they might be rubbing their scent all over you, but we just get to experience that as a really sweet interaction from the cat. So some of the most prevalent scent glands that they have are going to be on the top of their head, on the sides of their faces, and on their feet. So when they're expressing their love and attachment to you, they're doing that through rubbing that scent all over you. So if they're rubbing their head on your face and rubbing their head all over your legs, they really like you and they want you to be part of their colony. So the same is true when cats are quote unquote making biscuits. So when they're like kneading their paws, especially if they're doing this sort of on you. So if they're trying to do this like on your arm or on your leg, any of this scent rubbing behavior is going to be super affiliative and it's really sweet on the part of the cat. Like I said, they're saying, hey, I really like you and you're part of my colony, you're part of my family. And then cats express trust through vulnerability. So oftentimes this can look like them rolling over on their back and showing you their belly. And this is a huge display of trust. But again, cats are prey and their belly is going to be one of their most vulnerable areas on their body. So if they're showing you their belly, they're saying, hey, I trust you completely. So please, please don't read this as an invitation to then rub their belly. It's sort of violating that trust that they just offered you. So the cat's saying, hey, you've earned my trust. And then we break it by then rubbing them on that really vulnerable spot on their body. So maybe this is something that you do with your cat at home and they really enjoy those belly rubs. That is totally okay. But I would never recommend doing this with an unfamiliar cat. So if they roll over, just appreciate them for trusting you. But then continue petting, their heads and the sides of their faces instead of going for that belly. So we can also, when we're listening to our cats, just plain listen to the cat vocalizations. So these are going to be some examples of different cat vocalizations and a little bit about what they mean. So I'm going to play this so that hopefully we're able to hear the cat vocalizations. And then I'll also kind of talk through these different vocalizations and what we're seeing through their body language that kind of confirms, is this a happy sound or a stress sound and that sort of a thing. So as this loads, hopefully it does, because then I won't have to make the cat sounds. There's some examples of the meows. As this says, cats are rarely meowing at each other. They really meow to talk to us. So there was an example of the rubbing, right? The cat's like rubbing on the wall, they're rubbing on us. This tortie kitty has those really nice, sleepy, blinky eyes. This one's meowing.
What do you want?
So again, just really nice social affiliative behavior on the cat. There was an example of a nice tall tail As those cats are walking, their tails are held up nice and high. So meowing can also signify other things like, hey, I want to be closer to you. How dare you go to the bathroom without me? So we're never going to see a therapy cat that's this little. But they do meow as a way to talk to their mothers as well. Okay, so we can't talk about cats without talking about purring. So this is typically a very happy cat sound. It can also happen if they're in extreme pain, like if they're going into labor or have a broken leg, but usually it's a very happy sound. So here's those really sleepy, happy eyes again, very blinky. Trilling is going to be another pretty happy cat sound. Yeah. There's the rolling.
Cute.
So as they start to do some of that rolling behavior, they're showing their belly. There was some rubbing of the head on that blanket there. The chatter, we don't really need to talk about too much because this is going to be focused on something like watching birds out the window. So really unlikely to see this during a therapy setting. But I want you to look at those ears and those eyes. So those cats are watching the birds. Like, I don't think these cats are super interested in petting right now, right? They have totally other things on their mind. They're probably just not interested in engaging in snuggles. The yowling sound is going to sound a little bit more distressed. So this might be something that you hear like at the vet. You might hear it in the car. You might hear it if your cat sees another cat outside. So if your cat's looking out the window, you might hear this like at the other cat. Growling is obviously going to be not happy, right? We don't want to be interacting with a growling cat. These cats in particular are super duper duper well taken care of. I think the only chance they really had to get growling was getting some of their video from the vet's office. I don't want to be handled at the vet.
Good boy.
Same with hissing. So hissing is going to really clearly mean
You're going to make it easy to look at your teeth.
we don't want that.
Okay.
See those ears are flat back.
Unfortunately, that's the wrong side of your
The
mouth.
face is really wrinkled.
Oh, yes, you're so mad.
Yeah, they're just making it really clear. No, thank you. We do not want this.
So Carrie, I can't.
This little note said hissing indicates a fearful cat, but that they will fight if necessary. So I love that because it's reminding us that they would prefer to leave, but if they have to fight, they will.
Coco.
It can definitely be
Coco.
towards
You know.
people or other cats or other animals as well. If you hear a cat yakking, whether it's in your home or in a therapy session, right? Probably a hairball. Make sure we get that cleaned up.
What are you doing?
What's a dinner?
And we
What's
just
dinner?
need the tiny kitten meow because it's very cute. Okay, so can pause there for just another moment. Hopefully the video wasn't lagging too much. So what I was saying was matching up with the sounds and the things that you were seeing from the cat.
Video
Hi.
looked good for my end, and there are no
Awesome.
questions in the chat, just someone who said that this is very fascinating.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Cats are very fascinating. They are a lot of fun. Okay, so we've been listening to our cats, but how do you speak cat if you want to speak cat? One of the two best ways you can do to introduce yourself to a cat is slow blinks and then presenting your hand. So starting with the slow blinks, before you even reach out for the cat, you can try blinking at them. So a nice, slow, deliberate, sleepy blink, and see if they do a slow blink back at you. If they do, this is almost always followed by them coming over to you, seeking attention, purring, rubbing. And this really comes from cat-cat introductions, this idea of blinking. So imagine you have two free-roaming cats that come across each other, and they weren't interested in engaging in battle. They were like, I exist, you exist. I think we're going to be okay with this. They would first just ignore each other for a couple minutes up to a couple of hours. And so after they're like totally ignoring each other, they'll start to sort of scan the room. It's really interesting to see. So they'll like start over here, they'll look across the room. When they're looking at the other cat, they'll blink as they look at the other cat and then open their eyes and keep looking. They're totally avoiding any sort of direct eye contact. It's saying, I mean you no harm, I'm not here to fight, I come in peace. And that's kind of how they're introducing themselves to each other. Like, hey, I come in peace. So you can definitely try this with other cats. It's really, really satisfying when you blink at a cat and they blink back at you, like I said, and then it comes with all these other super affiliative behaviors too. You can try this with your cat at home, but don't be super surprised if they don't blink back at you. They already know you after all. So it's kind of like if you walked over to your spouse and gave them a handshake, they'd be like, we've met each other. What are you doing? But you can go try this with other cats out in the community. You can go to an animal shelter. That's a fun way to spend your day, is to go to all the cats and just try blinking at them and see how many of them will blink back at you. If you're in a therapy session and you're seeing the slow blinking from a cat, it's a really good indication that they're content. So once you get that blink, you can present your hand to the cat and then see if they want to interact with it. So present your hand and then wait and see what they're going to do. The idea here is that you're making your hand available to the cat and then you're leaving the choice up to them what they want to do with that. So if you're interacting with a really affiliative cat, you put out that hand and then they'll close the gap. They'll come all the way to your hand. They'll sniff it, they'll headbutt it, they'll rub on it. They might rub their whole body all over your hand. And that's the way that a cat is saying like, hey, yeah, I'm interested in hanging out with you. We could be friends. I would accept petting from you. So nice slow blink and then just presenting that hand to see if the cat wants to do something with it. So since we're talking about therapy cats, this question always comes up. So if you have a cat at home and you're thinking, well, maybe my cat could be a therapy cat, there's a couple things you can think about to think about if your cat is going to likely be a suitable candidate. So first of all, does your cat love other people? So when cats are coming over to your house or just when they're interacting with other people, is your cat going over to them, engaging with them, enjoying meeting them? So not just with you, but with strangers as well. Are they excited just about people in general? How do they react to visitors? So when someone comes over to your house, do they befriend the visitors, or do you maybe not see the cat for the rest of the day until that person leaves? We're looking for cats who are like I said with the strangers, like, hey, a new person, you could be my best friend too. Okay, and then how does your cat do outside of the home? So some of our HABIC cats do go camping and hiking and all sorts of things like that, but that is not necessary. It's just important that they are going outside of the home to some capacity and having positive experiences. So oftentimes with our cats, they go to the vet, and that's about all they do when they leave the house, which becomes pretty traumatic pretty quickly. And so then they hate going in the carrier, they hate going in the car, they hate going out to new places. So if you have a cat that you want to be a therapy cat, taking them on fun outings is a really important piece of that. I always recommend if you're taking the cat out that they're on a leash and harness. And you can try taking them, somewhere in the neighborhood. You can take them over to a neighbor's house. If you do that, I would recommend a neighbor who does not have other cats in the house. So even if they have cats and they like put the cats in a spare bedroom, that house is so saturated with the smell of the other cat. And like we were saying, smell is so important to the cats. So your cat might be super stressed just because they're in a different cat's environment. So taking them to somewhere that isn't quote unquote tainted with the smell of another cat and see how they do. Are they still outgoing? Are they still confident? Are they still interested in other people? And then also, how are they doing with the leash and harness? Are they comfortable wearing that leash and harness and still willing to get up and walk and move around when they're wearing the leash and harness? Speaking of, if you're curious about trying out the harness with your cat, just have to throw out, it is very, very likely that when you put that harness on your cat, especially the first time, they're going to flop over and refuse to move. They're like, what is on my body? This doesn't make sense. Totally to be expected that they're just going to need some time to get used to this new sensation. So you can help them get used to that harness, putting it on them for short periods of time, and then encouraging them to play or to get up and eat food while they're wearing it. Just make sure you're not putting them in a harness and then forcing them to move. So, don't put them in the harness and the leash and then pull them by the leash. Don't do that. Okay, and then is your cat okay in the car? So some cats go in the car and they are just stressed beyond all belief. So remember, your cat is going to need to travel to their therapy settings. So being comfortable in the car is going to be really important. So we definitely want them to enjoy being able to go in the car and go to their fun place and not get super duper, super stressed out because of the car ride. That's a part of that. And then finally, is your cat at least 18 months old? Don't get us wrong, we love kittens. We also don't trust kittens. They have a little bit too much energy, not quite enough impulse control, and they're just not predictable enough to be in a therapy setting. So if you're thinking your cat might be a good fit, and if you're wondering, is there a class for therapy cats? The answer is yes. So you and your cat would complete a 3-week one-on-one cat class where we do a really deep dive into your cat's body language, your cat's behavior. We go over safety procedures, how to introduce your cat to new spaces, and stuff like that. So if you're curious about this, you can check us out by going to habic.org and clicking on volunteer. You'll see all the information about getting started with your cat. You can also contact us with any questions at any time. You can always email us at habic@colostate.edu. Okay, so we do have some time for questions, and I'm just going to queue up some videos for us. In case there's a lull in questions, we have a couple minutes worth of cat videos to kind of sum up some of that cat body language that we were just talking about.
No questions yet, but I'm keeping an eye on the chat.
No worries. Okay, so the first video I'm going to pull up for us is going to be, actually, I'm going to turn the sound off on these. So one cat who's super confident, that's this kind of torty colored cat that we see here. We're not interested in our advertisements. And it's interesting because this video is labeled as like the 2 sweetest cats that just love the vet. So I agree that this gray torty cat on the left is very comfortable looking, but look at the orange cat. So you can see some of those airplane ears happening. You can tell how he's looking. He's looking over the edge of the table. He's looking to either side of the vet. Can I fit under this arm, over this arm? Can I get over there? His eyes are bigger. So this is some of that sort of more frantic cat language that I was talking about. So it doesn't have to be like really over the top and obvious, but it is just sort of a little more desperate to kind of be looking for that place to hide. So hopefully you can see that difference between the torty cat, who is more than happy to stay right where they are, and then the orange cat, who's a little bit more looking like they're trying to get somewhere. Okay, and then if you remember, I was talking about more fearful cats just won't even come out of their carrier. So here's an example of that at the vet, right? This cat does not even want to come out. So we would not do this in a HABIC session. We would leave the cat in the carrier and leave it totally up to them if they wanted to come out or not. But just to kind of show what that would look like when the cat's like, I don't even want to come out. And then on the flip side, and there he is kind of looking for those places to hide. On the flip side, here is a very happy, confident, gregarious cat who's going to show us making the biscuits with his feet. There's those nice, sleepy, blinky, relaxed eyes, some of that head butting, rubbing his head all over his person. So very happy, confident, very sweet kitty. Okay, and then one last one just for fun, because it's labeled the happiest sound that exists, and I kind of have to agree. So I'm gonna make sure the volume's on for this one. This is when the meow and the purr kind of combine. So you get that sound. And it just is a very, very happy sound. All right. So I can stop my share. That is everything I have. No questions? Can we get one person to put just any sort of question into the chat? I know somebody's got to be thinking something that they'd be curious to ask. You are very welcome. All right, maybe cat people don't ask questions. Oh, there's one. Do cats seem to have a hard time with quick movements? I would say that is going to totally depend on the cat. If they are stressed, yeah, absolutely. You know, those quick movements are going to make that even more difficult. And I would say quick movements over the top of them. So something like this, that can also be pretty startling for a cat. For cats who are feeling super duper confident and outgoing, I have not noticed that quick movements are overly startling, although I will say when my 2-year-old son meets cats, he is full of quick movements and they seem a little bit off-put by probably the combination of loud noise, quick movements, all those things, but it's going to kind of depend on the cat in the situation. So let's see. How do you encourage your cat to try on a harness? So you can hopefully have them nice and comfy. Some cats will just let you put the harness on, and then it's more of getting them used to wearing it. Some cats might not really be thrilled about the process of putting the harness on them. So you can kind of approximate that a couple of ways. So one, I don't think I have any objects, any collars or anything nearby. But you could use something like a dog collar and hold it out and then lure their head through it with a treat and get them used to like putting their head into something, putting their body into something. Sometimes a t-shirt, like a onesie, like a newborn onesie size clothing often fits cats pretty well. So you can start with that. It's a little bit looser fitting and a little bit more comfy. So that can be another approximation to the harness. Those are probably the two things I would really try to do. What causes a cat to all of a sudden lunge at you? So again, totally dependent on the context on what's happening with that cat. There are rare cases of seizure-like activity. So some of us might be thinking of a really infamous video from years ago of a family that locked themselves in the bathroom and called 911, and the cat was like trying to eat them through the door. Really interesting case, came down to a medical condition that cat was struggling with. But outside of that, like very atypical situation, I would say probably there is some more of that context, some of those subtle cues building up before the cat is all of a sudden lunging. So you might have that tail start to twitch. You might have those ears start to go back. You might have a purring cat who stops purring. There's another sensation that I didn't include in this because it's really hard to visualize in a photo. I didn't find a video of it either, but there's sort of a lightning that goes down their back where their back just like ripples. And so that can be another sign that maybe they're getting overstimulated. But a lot of times it's that overstimulation that causes the cat to say, stop. That's in the context of like you're petting the cat and then all of a sudden the cat's like lunging at you. In terms of if you like walk into a house and a cat is lunging at you, that would be, again, a very odd situation. That cat is probably extremely, extremely fearful. And like I don't know, like I said, I've worked with many, 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 many cats. I've met maybe one or two who do the like lunging when you walk in. I've heard people say that making biscuits is remnant from their kitten days when they're needing their mother's milk. Yeah, so I think really similar to humans, where some of those like early infancy behaviors we carry into adulthood, that needing the milk is sort of a leftover piece where, yes, I would say that is true. Do we use treats in therapy sessions? Sometimes, usually as sort of a reward for the cat, or honestly, most often, it's because the students really enjoy giving treats to dogs and cats. So if they can give the cats a couple of treats, as long as the cat doesn't become so engrossed into the food that they're not interested in petting anymore. What exactly is happening to a cat when they have catnip? I don't think we have time to answer that question. I encourage you all to do some Googling and checking that out. But yeah, there can be some really interesting side effects of catnip. We don't allow catnip in therapy settings because one, cats can become super drowsy and just not themselves. And then two, some cats become really sort of hyperactive and really into like predatory play, which also isn't great in a therapy setting. But I'm all for catnip at home, but we don't use the catnip in therapy sessions. So I think we're over time. So we will let you all go, and thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.